So, you want to understand the world of Hunt Showdown? Well, get ready, because we're diving deep into its dark, fragmented history. This isn't some clean, simple story. Oh no, it's a metaphysical disaster, pieced together from bloody journals and accounts you can't always trust. Let's see what kind of horrors we can dig up.
Yeah, that quote right there, it just sets the scene perfectly, doesn't it? This is not a story about heroes riding in to save the day. Not at all. This is about pure survival. It's about a world just falling apart at the seams while some unknowable evil is scratching at the door.
All right, so where does all this go down? We're talking Louisiana, 1895, the heart of the bayou, right at the end of the Gilded Age. But listen, this isn't the history you read about in textbooks. This is a twisted, nightmarish version of it, where all that march of progress got completely swallowed by a supernatural plague, an event that would eventually be called, you guessed it, the Louisiana Incident.
So you gotta ask, right? Who's fighting back against all this horror? Well, meet the American Hunters Association, the AHA for short. Now these guys have apparently been around for centuries, acting as silent guardians, the ones who take care of the things that go bump in the night. On paper, their mission is pretty simple. Get into the bayou, kill the monsters, and make sure the public never, ever finds out about it.
The sculptor's vile art. Okay, so right away, you know this is more than just some random monster outbreak. This isn't just ghouls and ghosts popping up. No, there's a malevolent intelligence behind everything, a kind of cosmic artist, and its medium, it's flesh, and its gallery is our world.
And that leads us to the million-dollar question, the one that even the toughest, most seasoned AHA hunters are probably asking themselves. What is the actual source of this corruption that's turning Louisiana into a living nightmare?
Well, the source has a name. Sort of. They call it the sculptor. But here's the really creepy part. Sculptor isn't its name. It's a classification, a type of being, which if you think about it, means the AHA has probably dealt with things like this before. But this one feels different. It's like an eldritch artist, and its grand masterpiece is our extinction.
Okay, so this is where you start to understand just how massive this threat is. The sculptor doesn't just kill things, it remakes them. It corrupts the land itself, it can possess a bunch of people all at once, and, get this, it can claim and copy human souls. Think about what that means. It's a pretty horrifying explanation for how hunters can come back from the dead, right? Their soul just gets copied and slapped into new flesh over and over again in this endless, awful cycle. And you can see its signature everywhere. All that weird insect-like stuff on its creations, that's its calling card.
Monsters made from men. And this, for me, is where the true horror of the bayou really kicks in. Because the monsters you're fighting, they aren't just monsters. They were people. Every last one of them has a tragic, human story buried somewhere deep down under all that rot and fury.
Let's take the butcher, for example. So its story starts with it being just a regular meathead, a lesser monster. After it gets killed, some unhinged taxidermist decides he wants a grotesque trophy. So he saws off its head and replaces it with a pig's head. But in doing that, he accidentally created the perfect vessel for the sculptor's power. The energy just floods back into this stitched-together corpse and it reanimates with one goal: kill the guy who made it. So you've got a monster born from another monster, all because of some guy's terrible idea.
But the sculptor has another trick up its sleeve. It doesn't always go for the innocent. Sometimes it seeks out people who are already monsters. Case in point, Vincent Corsica. This guy was a political assassin, and he already had some kind of weird powers before the corruption ever showed up. The sculptor didn't need to create any evil here. It just took the darkness that was already inside him and gave it a physical form, a terrifying body of insects and blades. And these origin stories, man, there's this weird twisted poetry to them. On one hand, you have the Immolator. It's basically a being of pure, righteous anger. A preacher gets beaten nearly to death, and with his last breath, he recites scripture and just explodes into this eternally burning creature of vengeance. And on the other hand, pure, disgusting filth. You've got two dumb hunters who eat rotten meat. The bloodworms inside them mutate and burst out of them to become the water devils. So you see, faith, rage, greed, filth, it doesn't matter. It's all just fuel for the sculptor's fire.
an association divided. So you've got this cosmic horror rewriting reality and an army of monsters running around. You'd think that humanity's last hope, the AHA, would, stick together. Right? Wrong. Turns out the biggest tragedy, the thing that really sealed Louisiana's fate, was what happened inside the AHA itself. The monsters outside were only half the battle.
See, the thing is, the AHA was never this big, unified force. It was always a really fragile alliance. You had mercenaries, cultists, lawmen, outlaws, all thrown together, and they all had their own agendas. The only thing stopping them from tearing each other apart was one man, their director.
And that brings us to 1895. The guy holding it all together was director Philip Huff Jones. But then, he's assassinated by this mysterious figure called Lynch. And with that one single act, everything falls apart. The AHA doesn't just break up, it shatters into a million pieces. The hunters form their own warring groups called pacts, and suddenly they're all fighting each other for power and for the bounty. The bayou turns into a total free-for-all. Hunter versus monster versus other hunters. Humanity's last hope? Yeah, they just became another predator in the swamp.
Echoes from a dead land. Okay, time to peel back the very last layer of this whole mess. We've talked about the monsters, we've talked about the broken people hunting them, but we still haven't answered the biggest question. Where does the sculptor get its power from? Well, the answer isn't in our world.
It's a place called the Land of the Dead. And no, this isn't hell or an afterlife or anything like that. The best way to think of it is like a parallel dimension, a giant reservoir of raw, chaotic stuff. The sculptor basically uses this place like a cosmic quarry, just pulling matter through cracks in reality to build its monsters. And anyone who gets too close to it, or sees it, or somehow makes it back, they're never the same again.
And here it is, the final twist. How do we know any of this stuff? Well, it's because decades after everything went down in Louisiana, some unnamed researcher gathered all these little fragments, journals, letters, random accounts. Everything we've been talking about is secondhand information filtered through time and trauma. We're not getting this story from an eyewitness. We're reading someone else's desperate attempt to piece it all together.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. The sculptor might be the one doing the sculpting, but it was human greed, human cruelty, and human madness that gave it the clay to work with. I mean, when the only group of people who can stop the apocalypse just tears itself apart for a little more power and profit, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In this whole twisted mess, who's the real monster?